Trump sails away as Rudy Giuliani drowns in legal bills. This was by Aswan and Adam. Trump sails away as Rudy Giuliani drowns in legal bills. Scroll down. As Rudy Giuliani's legal bills have piled up in recent months, and as federal investigators intensify their probe into Donald Trump's longtime associate, the former president appears willing to provide just as much help as he usually does when his friends are in need. Next to nothing. For months now, Trump has consistently ignored or rejected Giuliani's pleas for assistance. And it's not just that Trump and other prominent Republicans have been unwilling to open up their wallets or war chests to help offset Giuliani's mounting legal costs. In many cases, Giuliani's former Trump world comrades have declined to even acknowledge the existence of his legal defense fund, which has struggled to raise much of anything from the public. There have been times when I've asked people in the former president's orbit to see if Trump wanted to draw attention to the fundraising, said an ally and longtime associate of the former New York City mayor. That went nowhere. Many of these people won't even tweet or retweet links to the legal fund when I asked them to. Trump has blown off Rudy Giuliani's pleas for help as the feds circle. Trump has made some sympathetic gestures toward his former attorney as law enforcement officials have closed in on him. When the state of New York yanked Giuliani's law license, Trump issued a statement calling him the greatest mayor in the history of New York City and the Elliot Ness of his generation. It's the only formal statement where Trump has mentioned his prior attorney since Twitter suspended the former president's account. Other than that, Trump has only mentioned Rudy's legal troubles once before in an aside on Fox News, calling the FBI search of Giuliani's apartment unfair and a double standard like I don't think anybody's ever seen before. But while Giuliani's longtime friend, Bernard Kerik, the former New York City police commissioner, has pitched in to create a fundraising site for Rudy's legal bills, few others have been willing to even throw Trump's former consigliere and RT on Twitter. I have no idea what RT stands for. Trump himself can't retweet anything as he's banned from Twitter for instigating political violence, but he could issue a statement of support for Giuliani's fund and have it spread far and wide through the app. CrowdTangle, a search tool for browsing posts to public Facebook group pages and verified accounts, shows that virtually no conservative or MAGA heavyweights have echoed Giuliani's fundraising links at WinRed and the site set up for him by Kerik. The same is true on Twitter, where verified MAGA follower accounts have largely ignored Giuliani's attempts to fill his campaign coffers. The stakes for the former New York City mayor couldn't be higher as he faces a slew of legal troubles. Courts in New York and Washington, D.C. have suspended his law license, depriving Giuliani of an important source of income. In the meantime, his legal bills continue to grow. Attorneys for Dominion Voting Systems have filed a billion-dollar defamation lawsuit against Giuliani for echoing wild conspiracy theories about the company's products. Democratic lawmakers have also accused him, alongside former President Trump, of helping to incite the January 6 riots at the Capitol. And the most serious legal headache for Giuliani looms over all of his troubles: a Justice Department criminal probe into whether he violated foreign lobbying laws through his work in Ukraine. Naturally, Trump's sporadic public sympathy hasn't extended to amplification of Giuliani's legal defense fund, much less a check from the former president's well-stocked campaign fund. According to 3 sources familiar with the matter, there have been several fruitless attempts this year by Giuliani's camp to convince Trump to swoop in and provide significant financial support and other forms of assistance to Giuliani. After all, a primary reason for Giuliani is even under the investigative gaze of the feds is because of what he did, largely at the former president's behest during the Trump-UK scandal. Rudy Giuliani's legal fund was a bust. Now its donation page has disappeared. To Giuliani and his remaining confidants, Trump's glaring, if predictable, refusal to come to his loyalist rescue has been a borderline betrayal of a lawyer who landed in legal jeopardy precisely because of how zealously he worked to please Trump. Still, Giuliani and his advisors are going out of their way to not publicly voice their displeasure with the ex-president's lack of action or financial relief. According to a person with knowledge of the matter, Giuliani has reminded those close to him not to name Trump when complaining in public or on social media about how top Republicans have abandoned Giuliani in his time of distress. We are allowed to call out the RNC and other Republican leaders, this source said, but not Donald Trump. Though the former president has remained stingy toward his former top attorney, that hasn't stopped Trump from throwing Giuliani a bone every once in a while. On Thursday, when the ex-president delivered remarks at a New York GOP fundraiser, he made sure to call Giuliani to the stage, telling attendees, "We love Rudy." But beyond Trump's occasional pat on the head, it's unclear how many powerful friends Giuliani still has in Trump land. In late April, Alan Dershowitz, a celebrity lawyer and Democrat who worked on Trump's defense team during the first impeachment trial, told the Daily Beast that Giuliani has called him and that he had agreed to advise Giuliani and his attorneys during the federal raid. But in the time since, that advisory role appears to be on indefinite hold. "I have not called them, and they have not called me," Dershowitz said in a brief interview on Thursday. "Since then, they have not reached out to me for my advice, and I have not gone to them to offer it." And that finally seems to be the end of the article. All right, I'm going to read some more from somewhere else, so hang on. All right, this is from Think, Opinion, Analysis, and Essays. It says, Rudy Giuliani's New York suspension proves dangers of Trump lies. The court has sent a strong message about the real harm posed by those individuals who continue to push falsehoods about the 2020 election. This is by Ted Canfield, an attorney and author. Rudy Giuliani's license to practice law in New York State was suspended on Thursday by a state appellate court. For those who have been following the antics of former President Donald Trump's former lawyer for the past 5 years, this may not be shocking. But while in some ways it feels like the predictable culmination of years of questionable and offensive conduct, is still a big deal, and good news for anyone who cares about the integrity of the law profession. It's probably too much to hope that this finding will pierce the right-wing information bubble where 56% of Republicans still believe the election was stolen from Trump. But it should leave Giuliani's credibility in tatters with anyone not immune to the truth. And it sends a strong message about the real harm and indeed danger posed by those individuals who continue to push falsehoods about the election. Disbarment, a punishment meted out by a court for code violations, is always devastating to a lawyer. This punishment occurs when a lawyer commits an offense that directly relates to his or her fitness to practice law. Such offenses may include dishonesty and negligent representation. Giuliani, whose license is now suspended, is likely on his way to permanent disbarment, but he does have the opportunity to contest the court's rulings in a post-suspension hearing. His lawyers indicate they will do this, claiming in a statement that they believe that once the issues are fully explored at a hearing, Mr. Giuliani will be reinstated as a valued member of the legal profession that he has served so well in his many capacities for so many years. Trump's orbit is a dangerous place for lawyers. Rudy Giuliani learns this the hard way. This was in June 25th, 2021. But these denials to the contrary, it certainly looks like Giuliani has finally pushed his luck too far. New York law, among other things, forbids a lawyer from knowingly making a false statement of fact or law to a third person in the course of representing a client and engaging in conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. In other words, Giuliani's months-long legal campaign on behalf of Trump to overturn the 2020 presidential election through a series of baseless lawsuits and false public statements violated New York's professional ethics code. Giuliani's suspension was unusual because a court ruled that his rhetorical offenses actually posed a danger to the public and indeed to the nation. The court noted that the seriousness of respondents' uncontroverted misconduct cannot be overstated. This country is being torn apart by continued attacks on the legitimacy of the 2020 election and of our current president, Joseph R. Biden. The hallmark of our democracy is predicated on free and fair elections. False statements intended to foment a loss of confidence in our elections and resulting loss of confidence in government generally damage the proper functioning of a free society. When those false statements are made by an attorney, it also erodes the public's confidence in the integrity of attorneys admitted to our bar and damages the profession's role as a crucial source of reliable information. Giuliani's troubles with the appellate division of the Supreme Court of New York began last January when a legal advocacy group filed an ethics complaint. The advocacy group, a coalition of lawyers and former judges calling themselves Lawyers Defending American Democracy, presented a detailed complaint alleging that Giuliani knowingly propagated a false narrative of election fraud to delegitimize Biden's presidential victory and to undermine public confidence in the national electoral process. Because Giuliani's behavior harms the public and is ongoing, the court took the unusual step of issuing an interim order immediately suspending his license, even though the proceedings against him are also ongoing. As the court explained, interim suspension is a serious remedy available only in situations where it is immediately necessary to protect the public from the respondent's violation of the rules. The court also explained that immediate suspension is only warranted in cases where the evidence is uncontroverted and the court doesn't believe the bad behavior will stop. This is a strongly worded condemnation and does not bode well for any appeals. While Giuliani will have an opportunity for a post-suspension hearing, the court doesn't seem to expect Giuliani to prevail. Specifically, the court stated that the underlying offense is incredibly serious and the uncontroverted misconduct in itself will likely result in substantial permanent sanctions at the conclusion of these disciplinary proceedings. What this means is that Giuliani comes up with better defenses than those he has already presented, and it is unlikely he can. He will never again practice law in New York. Let me read that again because I think I botched it. What this means is that unless Giuliani comes up with better defenses than those he has already presented, and it is unlikely he can, he will never again practice law in New York. It is probably also too much to hope that Giuliani will stop lying, but it is a satisfying result for those who spent months watching in frustration as he whined incessantly, misused the court system with his baseless election fraud claims, and did ongoing damage to the legitimacy of U.S. elections. Unmasked strap. That is the end of the article. Berated an older woman on a Q train in an apparent dispute over his lack of a face covering, according to video. I picked up on this. I found this while being at Willie D's YouTube website, and so I went to look at it for myself. So I'm going to read this to you. An unmasked strap hanger berated an older woman on a Q train in an apparent dispute over his lack of a face covering, according to video. I wish the police would come and give you a $50 fine. The woman can be heard telling the man at the outset of the updated video, which was filmed by an Instagram user and posted to the site Monday. You know, also, she should have been. Masks are required on public transit by federal law. In New York, refusing to mask up on MTA trains and buses is a $50 violation.